This walkthrough shows DragonMist, a Skyrim mod that has been created to spark curiosity about basic genetics concepts. The mod provides the opportunity to breed dragons who will then be your ally during your gameplay experience. This first section introduces our narrative and the mage, or scientist, who then takes the role of a more knowledgeable
You seem to be the
other.
sort that can take care of yourself. I am Josreni Posari, mage, and I need help exploring the area. Interested? Fantastic! In my studies, I found indication that an ancient temple was once located near modern-day Riverwood. Inside is a great secret. The head priest of this temple is said to be able to resurrect his gods.
Give me
the
a mug of
dragons.
ale.
Changes
Coming
came
right
to
up.
Skyrim, and this secret could be valuable. The Valmor, the Imperials, if the dragons can be resurrected and convinced to be our allies, everyone would want them on their side. I hired a hunter to help me locate this temple. He mentioned a likely cave he was going to scout, but he hasn't yet returned. Let us begin there.
The player now leaves Riverwood and starts on the quest. The mage is directed to follow the player. He is our teacher, so he needs to be with the player, and he will make statements or ask questions or give hints that will then guide the player, hopefully spark some curiosity in the player such that they ask questions or investigate various things. Up at the top bar you can see this white diamond. When the quest is assigned, this white diamond is a marker that helps the player find the abandoned temple. The player has now found the abandoned temple, and this section will just show you some gameplay that is typical for Skyrim. You can loot things, pick up weapons, equip armor. In this room, this is the hunter the mage had sent to find the abandoned temple who never returned. We have put a ebony sword of fire on him so that gamers in this study will have a weapon they're more accustomed to, and novice players will have a stronger weapon that they can use than they would normally have as a novice player. This letter starts up our narrative and hopefully will generate interest in our quest so that the players will choose to continue on this quest. There's a fight here that is typical of a low-level fight for Skyrim, and this just stays true to the Skyrim gameplay and the Skyrim lore. And there's our mage who will continue to give the player information and guide them along the quest.
A shame, but we must explore this place. On that, we agree.
This book was written to continue building our narrative and to increase the player's interest in our quest. It starts to explain that magic can be used to resurrect dragons. Our player now has found the dragon priest who was trying to resurrect the dragons, and we will be finding his experiment logs that document his experiments and how he was going about working with the genetics to bring these dragons back. And here's his first experiment log, and this gives the players the information on how to operate the trait station.
I believe the priest was attempting to resurrect dragons. The process wasn't completely successful, as the beasts were often small and tame. I believe that is unrelated. The priest worked centuries ago and never created a dragon to his satisfaction. We must explore his work further. Fantastic! Collect the samples and take them to the station. Then we must supply the proper energy. This will require detailed reading. Red, purple, blue. Does that match anything else here?
The mage just gave the player the hint that colors are important. We have included a Punnett square in the second experiment log that is color-coded, and the trait station in the laboratory uses these colors as well. Red corresponds to an aggressive dragon, which is the dominant phenotype. Blue is recessive and creates a dragon ally, while purple represents the hybrid genotype that also creates an aggressive dragon, since the gene for aggression is dominant. This design scaffolds the learning by using visuals in the gameplay, the mage's dialogue which guides the player, and finally explicit textbook-like genetics concepts that are found in the Dragon Priest experiment logs. Here is the first experiment log that was found on the Dragon Priest's body. This book instructs the player on the operations for the trait station so that they can breed a dragon. This is our library. The player will come to learn that the library holds these books and the Dragon Priest notes, and that this is a valuable source of information should they choose to take advantage of this. This is the second experiment book, and it shows more explicit genetics concepts and the genetics notations, And we also have our Punnett Square in this book that is color-coded to match the trait station in the laboratory where they will create a dragon. Now the player enters the laboratory and finds the samples. The genetics notation is introduced here in the gameplay and supports the information that is given to the player in the experiment log. The player takes the samples over to the magic station where magic is used to combine the samples and create a dragon. The player must choose a sample and then infuse the sample into the essence and the stone. You can see the use of colors here, red, blue, and purple, that matches the Punnett Square in the experiment log. The 4 colors in the background are recombined based upon Mendelian probabilities, and these probabilities are based upon the sample choice of the player. This 4-color visual is another level to the learning goals by using the same colors as the Punnett Square in the experiment log. The player has now created a dragon follower, which is a novel thing in Skyrim. Normally, Skyrim dragons attack, and you must either kill them or be killed. The dragon follower is a reward to the player for their efforts to complete this quest.
This creature behaves like no dragon I've ever read about. The book said they could speak. The log says... It's a genius. He did this experiment many times and saw that his Dova showed 2 temperaments. Aggression seemed to be dominant. The priest said that he would occasionally get surprising results. His family knew exactly what he was looking for. The gene that controls temperament has 2 forms. The passive trait must be expressed by a recessive gene that is normally hidden. These passive dragons could choose to be our allies. Aggression is only the priest's first steps, though. We must learn more.
So here we're going to back up a little bit and show you the other choice. If the player makes a different combination and chooses a different color, say they choose red, which would always be an aggressive dragon 100% of the time, or in this instance where Adam chooses purple, which is between red and blue, so this signifies a hybrid, which be a capital A and a little a dragon, and since aggression is dominant, even though it's a hybrid, it would be an aggressive dragon. Which means that the player would have to fight and kill it, or it would fight and kill the player. At this point, the player has finished level 1 that dealt with dominant and recessive traits, and they are ready to now move on to the second quest, which will deal with codominance.
The police kept detailed notes. Apparently they were expecting a shipment of dragon samples from near White River. They had a base in a cave, it seems. Excellent. I shall wait here and continue the research. Oh, and I found another logbook. I put it down somewhere in the library. If you read it, perhaps we can figure out what these samples are for.
This segment is just showing how to use the world map to navigate and then your quest log to keep up with the quests that you have completed or the ones that have been assigned, and basically just shows navigation around the world as the player goes to the next quest. We're using a cave just above White Run, which is a really short walk, but gives the player a chance to experience the world that is Skyrim and the player experience and just this beautiful scenery in this open world, and kind of get them into the character of the game and see the world. And it's just a really short little walk up to this cave where the samples for the next quest will be found. You'll notice it's very dark, and you'll see the moon up in the sky. This is during the night time. Skyrim does cycle as far as day and night and days of the week, as well as weather patterns are random. Sometimes it's raining, other areas it's snowing, sometimes it's sunshine, sometimes it's storming. So it gives a very realistic environment. You have different enemies that attack you at night, such as vampires and werewolves, opposed to the enemies that will attack you during the daytime when you're walking through the world. So it just gives a very good immersion and realism experience for the player as they go through the world and you encounter various enemies like this wolf here.
Come along, no more stops. We need to find our way to Solitude.
Why are we even going to a wedding at this far-flung end of the Empire anyway?
I told you it's the wedding of Vittoria Vici, an extremely well-connected merchant with the East Empire Company.
These people were just random characters in the world going about their business, and it has nothing to do with the quest that we're doing, but it does have to do with the Skyrim gameplay, and you can interact with these NPCs, or you can keep on going on the quest that you're assigned. In Skyrim you can choose to do whatever quest you want, whenever you want to do it, and in any order. And so hopefully our player will stay on target and continue on the quest that we have assigned them, but they don't have to.
Go ahead, try and fight back.
So again, here we encounter an NPC that doesn't have anything to do with our quest. He is just in the game, and we communicate with him, and then we go on to do our quest that we've been assigned to find the samples. So we've killed the bandits that stole the samples that we're here to collect, and we find our sample case, and it gets us some information here for our next quest, and then we're instructed to return to DragonMist and talk to Basari and complete our next experiment. So here the player is walking back to DragonMist so that he can return to Basari and complete his experiments with the new samples. At this point, the player can choose to walk back, or they can go to their world map and fast travel. You can fast travel to any place that you've visited previously. So they have the option of going and exploring and looking at the world, engaging with some other people in the world, or they can go to their world map and return to any place that they have been before just by clicking on the button, and it will take them immediately there.
What's a milk drinker like you doing out here? Go home to your mother.
So now the player's back at DragonMist, and here's our temple where he's already killed all the enemies, and he's going to go on down through the library, coming up here, and through the library, and here is Basari.
Excellent. F and I. Seems pretty self-explanatory. I'll just load the samples into the station and see what they're for.
For the next experiment, what we are doing to try to simplify things, since we are working within some restrictions in what Skyrim will and will not allow us to do, the dihybrid cross becomes a little bit complicated, and we feared that it might introduce a lot of cognitive load and the visuals were going to be quite complicated. So we're going to let Basari, the mage, do the initial experiment, where he is going to end up with an aggressive dragon that has Frost Breath, a blue dragon, and this dragon is going to be aggressive and going to attack, and we have to fight and kill it. And then at this point, Basari can then say, well, let's just take the complexity off the table here. Let's start with the passive dragon that you already know how to create. We already have the sample for a passive dragon, and then the player only has to deal with the next gene, which will be the codominant gene of fire or ice, or the hybrid, which would cancel each other out because they both express equally. Fire would cancel ice, and the dragon has no breath. This is our initial attempt, and we're still working on this level, but this is our initial attempt to handle the dihybrid cross, probably in another experiment journal, and show a dihybrid Punnett square, and then move straight into codominance, where they're only dealing with the one gene because we've already got a passive dragon, and not have to deal with the complexity of an actual dihybrid cross with all of the 16 choices that it would give the player.
Well, at least partially. There are many combinations between aggression and 16. I agree. Perhaps I can limit the number of combinations if I use the massive dragon you created as a base. There, give it a try. The gene for voice seems to act very differently from the gene for temperament. There seems to be 3 different voice traits: fire, ice, or no voice at all. When we breed passive dragons with no voice, we get a fire-breathing dragon 25% of the time, and an ice-breathing dragon 25% of the time. No voice at all. Exactly. The Dragon Priest's theory was that both the fire and the ice genes were dominant. Both are expressed. They cancel each other out. Yes, he referred to it as codominance. It's very interesting. It should be explored more fully.
So now that Basari has done the first experiment and guided the player through that and what's expected, we have a new experiment log that goes into codominance and a new Punnett square. And we have a new station here with new samples. And the player doesn't have to deal with aggressive and passive anymore because we're starting off with a passive dragon and just dealing with the one gene for fire or ice breath. And since it's codominance, we have 3 phenotypes. We have new colors, and they can experiment here and try to get a passive dragon that breathes fire or ice, or 50% of the time they'll get one that breathes nothing if they use a hybrid cross with the FI and FI sample. So Adam decided to create a fire-breathing passive dragon shown here, and you can see he differs from the original passive dragon because he's orange, which corresponds with fire, and then here of course is the aggressive dragon that fought back and we had to destroy. So this is the end of level 2 as we have it right now. It will probably change some because we've just started working on it and we've got some things we've got to work out, and some things may change with the genetics. We've set up level 2 very carefully to hopefully lead into level 3, where we will introduce mutagens. The mutagens will be introduced into the genetic mix so that when you have a hybrid, fire and ice, instead of canceling each other out, it will create a dragon that can breathe fire and ice. In Skyrim, dragons only have one shout, so a dragon that can breathe fire and ice would be a novel creation in Skyrim, and hopefully be an incentive to keep the players interested. Hopefully will give them a reward that will be worth working towards. And this is our demonstration, and I appreciate your time and your consideration in watching this, and we feel excited that we've got something really novel and fun to play, and hopefully give enough genetics material to spark that little bit of curiosity in a student and hopefully get them interested in what genetics is all about. Thank you very much.